Good evening all, I'm Aditi Lamba with the Tuesday night edition of South Asian News. Welcome to Vision of Asia, the voice of our community. We are coming to you from our studio here in New York City. Here is what's happening tonight in the coronavirus pandemic. Global cases of COVID-19 have now topped 13.1 million with at least 574,000 deaths. In the United States, there are nearly 3.4 million cases with at least 135,000 deaths. This means nearly 1 out of every 100 Americans has tested positive for COVID-19. There has been a dramatic surge in coronavirus cases in the nation, with 3 U.S. states accounting for 18% of the new COVID-19 cases around the world: states California, Texas, and Florida. Prompted by the surge, many states have now paused or rolled back their reopening. At least 27 states have placed reopening businesses on hold or reimposed measures aimed at slowing the spread of this virus. In California, the governor has ordered all counties to cease indoor activities, citing the increase in rate of positive cases and instances of community transmission, which includes bars, restaurants, gyms, movie theaters, and many more in country's most populous state. The governor stated that it's incumbent upon all of us to recognize soberly that COVID-19 isn't going anywhere until there is some vaccine or an effective therapy. This is happening while new coronavirus cases have risen in 46 out of 50 U.S. states. These rising cases and deaths have left educators from California to Wisconsin opting for online learning rather than return to classrooms when the school year begins for many states in just a few weeks. Los Angeles, San Diego, and Atlanta have announced that children would be in virtual school starting August and would stay at home. We'd like to reach out to South Asian parents and educators to share your experience and your story on the transformation in the education system and what you expect. Do reach us on events@itvgold.com. Also calling out South Asian medical professionals and frontline workers to share your perspective with us. Also, we'd like to remind all that are in hotspot states to continue practicing social distancing, wearing masks and washing hands, and follow the guidelines of your state and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. Stay safe and healthy. With that, it's now time to begin the South Asian News segment for tonight, reflecting much on the epicenter state of Florida, along with elected officials on the ongoing global anti-racist movement. Let's take a look at the headlines. Mayor Francis Suarez addresses surging coronavirus cases and reopening city of Miami, Florida. Mayor Sadaf Jaffer on systemic racism, equality, and voting responsibility, Montgomery Township, New Jersey. Chhaya CDC hosts virtual annual Chatpati Mela 2020, celebrating South Asian and Indo-Caribbean communities. It's time for a short break on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back, I'm Aditi Lamba and this is Vision of Asia Tuesday night episode, featuring elected officials and medical professionals on the coronavirus impact and measures. We have tonight an ITV Gold exclusive with Mayor of City of Miami, Mayor Francis Suarez, who spoke to us on Miami emerging as the new epicenter of the pandemic in the nation. Coronavirus cases are soaring in Florida. Across the state, at least 48 hospitals have 0 ICU beds, and Miami is now the new epicenter of the pandemic, with more than 2,000 patients hospitalized and hundreds in intensive care units. This past weekend, the state reported its highest number of new COVID-19 cases in one day, with more than 15,000 cases with at least 4,500 deaths. Known as the Sunshine State, Florida, if it was a country, it'll be ranking 4th highest right now in the world, reporting new cases according to data from Johns Hopkins University. With that, Mayor Suarez brought in much perspective and opinion on the concerning rise of cases in the city of Miami, explaining the impact of COVID-19 on communities, reopening, and the measures that have been taken to contain this virus so far. Urging all to wear a mask and practice social distancing, here is a segment of our conversation with Mayor Francis Suarez. We're being joined by Mayor of the City of Miami, Mayor Francis Suarez. Thank you so much for being with us here on ITV Gold. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, it's an honor to have you here, and it's so important for us to discuss what is happening in what is being called the new epicenter of this coronavirus pandemic. Just starting off the show, I have to ask you one of the biggest questions of the hour that the entire nation is asking. Did the state of Florida reopen too fast? I know the city of Miami was one of the last ones to open, but according to you, after looking at all of these surges in cases, do you think the state opened too fast?
You know, I have been getting that question a lot. It's probably the question I get the most often. And the truth of the matter is there was a criteria for opening, right? And the criteria required us to have a declining number of cases for 14 consecutive days, at least in Miami. And we had a declining number of cases for 30 days. And so the question becomes, you know, and I think this is part of what's happening now. What is the long-term strategy, which is, you know, we have to know as a community what is the objective. And I think what happened is when we did the stay-at-home order, we got the virus down to a very, very low level. And unfortunately, when we opened, you know, people started behaving as if the virus didn't exist. They forgot about how efficient the virus was at spreading. And so we got to points where we had almost 600% faster spread in the last few weeks than we had back in late March, early April when we put in a stay-at-home order. So I think it was unfortunately more behavioral than it was operational in terms of when we opened up. And I think that's the challenge that we have now, which is to you know, continue to message that this is a virus that spreads very rapidly and can be very deadly.
Definitely. What is the current rate of hospitalization and how rapidly is it increasing in the city of Miami?
It's at the highest rate that it's been since this began. We have over 1,700 people hospitalized from COVID. Our ICU capacity is at about 11%. And we have ventilators, you know, people on ventilators are almost at the highest level. So what we haven't seen yet, and hopefully won't see, but are likely to potentially see, is the death rate going up. The death rate has remained low, which is a good thing. And treatment has gotten better in the months that we have been dealing with COVID. But the hospital capacity issue is definitely a worry. And the fact that, you know, the death rate has remained low is obviously a good thing. But we're seeing disturbing numbers from ventilators that might increase the death rate in the future.
You know, we saw the same situation here in the city of New York, in the entire state of New York, where hospitals ran to its capacity. There weren't enough ventilators. There weren't enough hospital beds. If that situation happens in the city of Miami, are you ready to call in national troops or get more help from the federal and state government if needed?
Absolutely. I mean, we had, and we still have some excess capacity, sort of what you call portable hospitals. We've created one in the Miami Beach Convention Center. We had one in Tropical Park, which we actually closed down. So we would probably reopen that if we needed to. But certainly hospital capacity, and it's not just hospital capacity, it's the personnel. Because you know, what people don't understand is a ventilator, it's not just a bed. It's a machine, plus it's the people who know how to operate the machine. It's a team of people that create a ventilator bed. And that's not something that you can just replicate overnight. So there is definitely a possibility that we may need at some point to ask for some help from some of those other governments.
Are there enough frontline workers in the city of Miami currently, and is there enough PPE supply for them?
Right now we're okay on PPE supply. I haven't heard anything negative about PPE supply, and it appears to be that we do have enough frontline workers, but it all depends. I mean, that's a question that is, you know, it's a static question, but it depends on a moment in time. So today we have that. If you know, the curve doesn't flatten, and we're starting to see, by the way, some evidence that it is flattening in Miami-Dade County. If it doesn't flatten, then we could have an issue going forward.
I'd like to take this moment for you to reach out to the families of Floridians and even, you know, Americans who have lost a loved one due to COVID-19. There have been over 4,000 deaths in the state of Florida itself. I would love for you to give a message out to these communities that are grieving, and perhaps how they can reach out to resources for help.
Well, my heart goes out to them. You know, I was one of the first, I think I was the second person infected with COVID-19 in Miami-Dade County. So I'm very familiar with the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen with your body. And I know in many cases, some of these family members did not even have an opportunity to say goodbye to their family members in person because they were separated and isolated from them. So it's been an incredibly tragic situation. And my hope is that all the efforts that we make will, you know, make the loss of their family members something that it does not happen in vain. And hopefully in the future, when we're confronted with a threat like this, we're better prepared to deal with it than we are today.
Well, I truly appreciate you for your time here, Mayor Suarez. I just would love for you to give one last message to our South Asian audience watching you live on ITV Gold.
It's an honor and a privilege to be on with you. This is an important segment of our community as well. For me, one of the strengths of our city is our diversity. And so I'm very, very blessed to know that we have a robust collection of multicultural people in our community. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to be their mayor.
Watch our full interview with Mayor Francis Suarez on itvgold.com. Let's now take a look at Chhaya CDC, who has continued to provide services and help to all in need in New York that have been severely impacted by the ramifications of COVID-19, and has established a COVID-19 relief fund which provides direct assistance to families struggling due to pandemic. Chhaya CDC's mission is to advocate for South Asian and Indo-Caribbean communities with works in economic well-being and housing stability, focused on key policy issues for immigrants such as economic justice, immigration, civic engagement, and much more. Recently, Chhaya CDC hosted its virtual 2020 annual Chatpati Mela celebrating South Asian and Indo-Caribbean cultural heritage and changemakers. Featuring popular artists, poets, performers, and others, the virtual event commemorated and honored Chhaya CDC's work in uplifting creative artists, community activists, and organizations that advocate and empower voices and identity of our community and inspire and motivate others.
And we're so happy that all of you are here with us today to be a part of the 10th annual Chhaya Chatpati Mela. Before we get the program started, you can also donate to Chhaya CDC from your phone by texting Mela, M-E-L-A, to 44321, or by going to the Chhaya website at www.chhayacdc.org. Our Chatpati Mela would not be complete without our famously infamous Pani Puri Golgappa eating contest. So here's a little taste. Well, right now, I have a very, very special performer to introduce to you, Sunny Singh. Sunny is based in Brooklyn and has launched a solo project that reimagines the spiritual tradition of Sikh Kirtan with boundary-defying Punjabi anthems to uplift and ignite.
छूता है जापानी पतलून इंग्लिस्तानी सिर पे लाल टोपी रूसी दिल भी दिल है इनकीलाबी छूता है जापानी पतलून इंग्लिस्तानी सिर पे लाल टोपी रूसी दिल भी दिल है इनकीलाबी
Sat Sri Akal, Namaskar, Assalamu Alaikum, and hello. Welcome to Chhaya CDC's Richmond Hill Community Center. My name is Jakpreet Singh, and I'm the lead organizer with Chhaya CDC, as well as the site supervisor for our Richmond Hill Community Center here. Here at Richmond Hill, we have all of the services, workshops, and events that we hold in Jackson Heights, but right here in the heart of the Indo-Caribbean and Punjabi communities in Queens. On top of holding down the fort here, the other thing that I do is lead our civic engagement program. And it's one of the most important things that our communities can do is be civically engaged. We need to make sure that we're holding our elected officials accountable for the issues and concerns that impact our communities. We need to make sure that our voices are heard, and we need to make sure that we're organized in order to do it. I'm excited to have all of you here at our Chatpati Mela virtually, but I hope to also see you next year in Jackson Heights, in the streets, taking part in the Pani Puri eating contest, enjoying the food of the various vendors who come, and supporting our local small businesses. Thank you so much for attending this year, and we hope to see you again next year.
So right now, I'm going to go over the organizations that Chhaya is going to recognize and some individuals here. So each year at the Mela, Chhaya recognizes individuals and organizations that have made an impact in our community. Today, we are awarding the people who have shown up these past few months for South Asians and Indo-Caribbeans, either through immediate emergency relief or through sustained organizing for justice and equality. We can't give these awards in person this year, but each awardee will be receiving a framed and engraved print in the mail. The awardees this year are Rakshana Ali, Moriam Perven, Khalsa Aid USA, the United Sherpa Association, Equality Labs, and the Caribbean Equality Project.
And it's time for a short break. Stay with us on Vision of Asia. Voice of the Community will be back shortly. And welcome back. This is Vision of Asia, the South Asian news segment, and I am Aditi Lamba. We have been showcasing many comments on the ongoing movement of anti-racist dialogue and representation of communities of color following the death of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. Since then, we have seen massive protests and demonstrations across more than 100 U.S. cities and 20 countries around the world, bringing forth a conversation focused on structural systemic racism as well as police brutality, demanding a reform in the government where vulnerable voices are protected. As these issues have come into the forefront, we wanted to present elected officials on being an ally of the Black Lives Matter movement, racism in America, and the importance of voting in this presidential election year. Here is Mayor of Montgomery Township, New Jersey, Mayor Sadaf Jaffer on systemic racism, equality, and voting responsibility. Mayor Jaffer hoped for more equal resources and opportunities for minorities. Since the death of George Floyd, as you said, we've seen nationwide protests. I know in New Jersey, a lot of these protests and demonstrations were very peaceful and they were demanding for justice. I also know that in New Jersey, there have been some legislation already approved to help, bring forth a greater discussion and have some changes being made. But if you're looking at the South Asian community, where do you think our role and responsibility lie in this conversation? And how important then do we become as allies of the Black community?
Well, I mean, I think it's the moral obligation of every American to affiliate themselves on the side of justice, on the side of equality. I do think that traditionally, probably a large part of our community was not so engaged in these issues because perhaps we didn't really understand the history, we didn't know the history, we didn't see our as a part of it. Now I'm seeing much more speech and participation from South Asian organizations. An organization that I'm involved with, ISA, Inspiring South Asian American Women, specifically had a panel discussion that I was on. But we are a part of this situation because, you know, the wealth of this country was built on the labor and the work of Black Americans. And so all of the opportunities that we have are because of that. So we need to acknowledge that and we need to try to make things more equitable here. And one of the things that I often mention as well is that, you know, the immigration system in this country was specifically set up not to allow Asians to immigrate to this country and not to allow Asians to become citizens of this country. And it was not until the Civil Rights Movement where those immigration quotas were abolished because they were considered to be racist, and where South Asians and Asian Americans were allowed to become citizens. So even those most basic rights that we have, and the fact that for most of us, the fact that we're in this country is because of the Civil Rights Movement. So we need to acknowledge that those people in those communities, in the Black community specifically, fought for us. And so we need to be able to give that back and make sure that we're all working for equality and resource allocation and support for everyone.
You know, as these conversations continue, Mayor, and as we see more of the federal and state governments get involved even more in the legislature, what do you hope happens with this entire situation? What are some of the possible resolutions, I believe, that we could look forward to?
Sure. Well, we need more equal resources, especially for school districts, for minority serving school districts. One of the things that a lot of people might not realize is that New Jersey is the fourth most segregated state in terms of its school districts in the country, which means that there are white students who would go to school their entire career and never see a black student in their classroom, and vice versa. And that has to do with the history of redlining and the exclusion of black communities from the more wealthier, prosperous areas, and the fact that they were not allowed to build wealth through property ownership, which is how a lot of Americans do, and American families do build their wealth. I would want to see more equality in terms of the distribution of wealth in the country. Recent research has shown that the average white American family has $170,000 of net worth, and the average black family has $17,000 of net worth. So, one race has 10 times the wealth of the other. That's not showing that it's a level playing field. It's not showing that everyone can accomplish whatever they want. So we need to provide more opportunities to equalize that. And, that's what I would want to see. And then certainly in terms of racism in the schools, that needs to be stamped out. No student should ever be called the N-word. I find it absolutely appalling. And the sad part is, sometimes it is South Asian American students and young people who are engaging in this sort of racist language, and that is absolutely unacceptable. So I would want to see, no incidents of racism happening in the schools. I would want to see black children encouraged to, go to college if that's what they want, and not told that they should go to community college. Like, these are all the sorts of it's not small, but so many things that add up over time that really traumatize the black community. And so I would want to see that go away, and for there to be more opportunity for the black community and for all of us to be able to accomplish what we want in this country. But I think the first step is acknowledging the disparities. And a lot of people are doing that now who maybe were just not aware before.
And according to you, if you could give one advice on terms of voting, what would you say?
Well, voting is extremely important. It's your vote is your voice. And there are many people who don't have the right to vote. So for many of us who do, it's really incumbent on us to use that right. And today is primary day. If you haven't voted yet, you still can, if you are registered Democrat or Republican, you can still submit your ballot, either postmark it or drop it in one of the drop boxes, or you can vote in person at a few locations within each municipality. So definitely vote. The November election is probably going to be one of the most important elections that has happened in our lifetimes, and it's really, I think it's a time to think about what direction we want our country to go in, and what elected officials represent our values. My advice would be to not be cynical. As hard as it is, and we might want to believe, well, politics is just a mess, it's all terrible people. It's not all terrible people. There's a lot of good people who want to do good things, and you have a right to tell those people if you don't agree with what they're doing. As their constituent, you can contact them, you can meet with them, you can demand that they change their votes or change their policies, but don't cynical. Can get better, and it's really our responsibility through voting to make sure that the best people are in elected office.
And that is all for tonight's show. Remember to send us a suggestion and get your voices and organizations on our show. Email us on events@itvgold.com or follow us on Facebook @itvgold. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch many of our popular shows for free. Thank you for joining us tonight from Queens, New York. This is Vision of Asia, and I am Aditi Lamba. Take care and be well.